Cristabelle Braden is a speaker and singer-songwriter. After experiencing a traumatic brain injury, she took to music and began songwriting as not only a way to recover, but to also worship. Today, she is an advocate for those suffering from brain injuries. She ministers to survivors and their families and shows that there is hope ahead. Please welcome Cristabelle Braden.
Cristabelle, hi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So for those who maybe don't know a lot about you or a lot about your story, maybe we can hear a little bit about, what happened to you in your faith journey.
Absolutely. So my faith journey, as probably everyone can say, has been a long process and a walk with the Lord. I had my first traumatic brain injury 14 years ago, and that led to multiple re-injuries. Over the last decade or so, I've had multiple concussions and TBIs. And after my first brain injury, I had to relearn everything, like taking a shower, getting dressed. I couldn't put my clothes on. I had short-term memory loss. The right side of my body got weaker. Headaches, overstimulation, light sensitivity, just constantly feeling confused and overwhelmed. And the doctors didn't think I'd ever finish high school. And by the grace of God, I am here today. And it took an extra year, and rehab therapies, but I did finish high school, and the Lord has been with me every moment, and I was able to go to college. I studied music, and just this year I graduated with my master's in theological studies. And so, what doctors or what man says is impossible, God always has a plan, and He can do anything.
Amen. Amen to that. If you don't mind me asking, what actually happened? How did you get the brain injury?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first brain injury, like I mentioned, I've had multiple, but the first brain injury was actually a game at my youth group. So when I was younger, I would go to youth group, and we would sometimes play games, and this one was a lot of running, and imagine a bunch of teenagers in a room. The boys decided to pull a prank, and chaos ensued, and I ended up slamming my head into a cement wall. My head bounced off the floor. I was unconscious. We're not actually sure how long. I don't remember right after the incident or almost the first whole year. My brain was just recovering, and so we've been told what happened, and my brain started to swell and the pressure increased, and so a couple days later I had to relearn everything. I kept getting worse and worse, and then over time I continued to improve, and then my balance and my vestibular system's off, which led to falling and hitting my head again. So it wasn't so much the one incident. That was definitely the one moment that changed everything, but it's been multiple injuries over time.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about that. But of course, one of the great things about that is, one, obviously you're doing so well, and what an awesome testimony that is. But I love the way that music became, and worship became, such an important part of your recovery journey. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. Yeah, so as I mentioned, it was pretty hard when I first had my injury, and I actually never wrote a song before the brain injury. And after, I was having a really hard time expressing myself in conversations. I had frontal lobe damage, so my emotions were all over the place, and I would cry and I would throw temper tantrums, and I just couldn't regulate emotional responses. I also struggled with my speech, and singing really helped with that. And so I started writing songs pretty much out of nowhere, and they rhymed and they made sense and they were deep. And the doctor told my parents, well, I guess music is lighting something up in her brain that nothing else is. And something I've read and learned is that music is actually the only thing that lights up every area of your brain, that uses your brain differently. And so the Lord used music in my healing process. And worship music is so powerful. So, when any music affects our brain, but music with worship, it's our brain and it's our spirit. And so writing music is kind of, my parents saw, hey, there's still something in there, and over time, it's been a journey. I didn't set out say, oh, I want to be a singer-songwriter at all. Somebody just asked me to share my songs at their church and their story. And from there, somebody asked me to share that. And it's just grown into a touring ministry over time.
Brain injuries are such a hard thing because, our family, our son has had a brain injury from epilepsy, and he's recovering from that, but there's all sorts of challenges. Lots of people in our church have different experiences, from, kids in sports to someone falling and tripping to Alzheimer's and things like that. It is such a hard, that's really something that's on your heart, isn't it? Because it's a different kind of ailment than the others in its own unique way.
Absolutely. It's invisible, so you can't see it on the outside. And so I'm really passionate about bringing awareness. I started an online global support community called Hope After Head Injury almost 10 years ago. It was 2012, and it started just as a social media page. And over the years, more people joined, and it's grown. And now I host once a month Zoom support group. We have a Facebook group with thousands of people that talk about brain injuries and bring hope. I also have a podcast for brain injury awareness and education called Hope Survives Brain Injury Podcast. And my goal is to bring awareness and hope to survivors and families. I also have started a group called Brain Injury Bible Study, where we read the Bible together. And part of my reasoning of getting my master's in theology is because I want to create Bible studies for people who've had traumatic brain injuries, because it's hard to read and hard to comprehend. And so, but faith is the thing that gets us through. So Amen. I just hope that I can make a difference.
And of course, there's lots of people going through all sorts of stuff. Oral Roberts used to say everybody's a little bit sick, like everybody has something that they're going through. Very often it is something really traumatic, cancer or some kind of, something. What do you say to somebody who's watching now and man, they are just holding on to that last thread of hope? They just feel so stuck and they're like, I don't feel like I'm ever going to get out of whatever this thing is. Do you have an encouragement for those types of people?
Absolutely. So I know that whatever we go through, there are so many invisible struggles. It could be a brain injury. It could be another injury or illness. It could be a financial struggle, an addiction, a relationship, something happening in your family. And whatever you're going through, first of all, know that God sees you, even if it's invisible and other people don't. And when it comes to getting through it, I still have daily struggles from my brain injury, but the Lord has been showing me that it's a moment-by-moment process with Him. I've been reading a book called The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer, and he writes that faith is the gaze of a soul upon a saving God. And so when I think about faith like that, if we continue to set our soul gaze on Him, when we look at the Father, when we look at the cross, when we look at Christ, and we see, we might not be able to make it, look at our life and look at the next week and think, I can make it through that. No, but you can make it through this moment with Him. Keep the gaze of your soul upon Christ, and with that, you can do anything with Him.
Amen. Thank you, Cristabelle. What a great word that is, and what great music you make. If you're encouraged by this story and you want to hear some of Cristabelle's music, I want to encourage you to do that at CristabelleBraden.com. Cristabelle, thank you so much. What a great story and encouragement to all of us.
So much. God bless you. Thank you.